Hello, and welcome to my YouTube version of the homily for the fourth Sunday of Advent. Pretty short today, I think. We'll see about that. With the fourth Sunday of Advent, we very fittingly had the Visitation of Mary to Elizabeth for our Gospel reading. That was pretty much the last thing that happens before, the birth of Jesus, so the timing checks out. I just have a couple of, let's call them pre-Christmas reflections to offer you. And first of all, this is just a sweet little moment in the gospel story. The Bible is very dramatic. There is a lot of conflict, there's a lot of, literal drama, and the gospel is no exception. And here we have this little coffee break of a moment. Mary and Elizabeth are hanging out, celebrating their friendship and their unusual pregnancies. Unusual because Elizabeth was quite old in terms of years in which you'd try to get pregnant. And Mary's unique case, I feel, is pretty well understood by Catholics at the very least. So it's a very sweet little story about the power of human companionship. And I imagine that this is a fairly easy thing for people to pray about when they pray the rosary with joyful mysteries. The second joyful mystery, the Visitation of Mary to Elizabeth. Both the women and both of the babies understood that something special was about to begin. How much exactly did these two women know? That's hard to say. Mary probably had a fairly solid idea. For Elizabeth, she may have had less of an actual vision of what the future was going to be. It was probably more of a gut feeling, and by all means call that a guess. So, as the second thing I wanted to offer today, I want to compare the events of the Gospel, the Visitation, to the words of our second reading. It was from the letter to the Hebrews. That is a tough part of the New Testament. Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but you have prepared a body for me. That's the incarnation. The sacrifice will come later at Easter. But now it's all about God preparing a body for his Son, an opportunity for him to share in the lives of humanity, to share our burden and our toil in addition to our joys and delights. Behold, I come to do your will. That is Christ declaring his mission. He heals the sick, he gives sight to the blind, he expels demons for the troubled. That is God's will. And that is the beauty of the incarnation, God with us, God among us. Yes, the sacrifice of the Lamb is a part of that. Don't worry, Easter will have its time. But first is Christ sharing our human nature that we might share in his divine nature. Even as early as the Visitation of Mary to Elizabeth, we get a glimpse of that. The influence of God's divinity in the world is already at work between these two women and their unborn children. The winds of the Holy Spirit are already beginning to blow. So what was the line? What was the final line of the second reading? We have been consecrated through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. In other words, we are with God thanks to Christ's birth and death on the cross. The incarnation is incomplete without the cross. And the cross is meaningless without divinity incarnate, which is the Christmas mystery. When you put them together, what do you get? Consecration, consecration with the sacred. That word should be easier for us to understand. Our ancestors who spoke Latin, they just understood this. They got it as a fairly basic part of their language. Consecration with the sacred. And this basic utility of the language, of how Latin is structured, it still exists in our Romantic languages of Italian, French, and Spanish. So what's that dish most people like in Spanish? Chili con queso, chili with cheese. Chili con queso. Consecration with the sacred. God is the sacred. Through Christ, we are with the sacred. We are with God. We are in Him at baptism. We are with Him in the consecrated Eucharist. We are with Him whenever we open our hearts to Him, whether on the glorious days like Christmas or Easter, but also on perfectly common days like the Tuesday of the 17th Sunday of Ordinary Time. So in these very, very last days of Advent, let's remember the preciousness of the Christmas mystery, the mystery of the Incarnation. Mary and Elizabeth pre-celebrated it at the Visitation. We especially celebrate it on December 25th, but it should be in our hearts and in our minds every day of our lives as we consecrate ourselves to the Lord.